My name's Julian. I'm 31, and depending on who you ask, I'm either a bartender or something else entirely. My family prefers the first version, especially my dad, Robert. To him, a real man wears a tie, drives a German sedan, and climbs some corporate ladder to nowhere while bragging at every family barbecue about his latest promotion. You know the type. So when I dropped out of college at 22 and started working behind a bar, not as a stopgap, but as a career, he made it clear I was an embarrassment. Not in dramatic, disowning kind of way. No, that would have required effort. He just gradually erased me from the picture. Conversations, family photos, even seating charts at holidays. My mom went along with it. My sister Tessa, she followed their lead. So I stopped showing up to things. That is until last weekend. Tessa got married. Big extravagant wedding at some country estate that looked like it was pulled straight out of a royal romance movie. I wasn't invited to the engagement party. I wasn't even told about the bridal shower. But I got a formal invitation to the wedding mailed, even addressed by Mom. Maybe she felt guilty. Or maybe it was because Grandpa Harold, Dad's dad, the only one who ever gave a damn about me, had threatened not to come unless both of his grandkids were treated equally. So I RSVP'd. Yes, I didn't rent a tux or show up in a flashy car. Just a tailored black suit, clean shave, and a quiet entrance during cocktail hour. I figured I'd stay on the sidelines, congratulate my sister, and leave before dessert. But life had other plans. The moment I stepped onto the gravel path leading up to the venue's main hall, I heard the tail end of a laugh I recognized too well. Dad's. I walked around the corner and saw him near the bar talking to a group of distant cousins and one of Tessa's new in-laws. His glass was half raised, his words already slurred. Julian. Oh, you mean the bartender? He snorted like the word tasted sour. He's probably mixing rum and cokes in some club downtown. He won't last 10 minutes in a place like this. They all laughed. Even Mom. I could have turned around right then, but I didn't. I clenched my jaw, straightened my spine, and kept walking like I hadn't heard a word. My hands were shaking, not from embarrassment, but from restraint. I hadn't seen Dad in over 2 years, and the first words out of his mouth about me were a punchline. The reception hall was huge. Marble floors, vase ceilings, chandeliers big enough to crush a smart car. People in designer suits and sequin gowns sipped champagne and laughed like they were born doing it. I stayed on the edge of the room, watching the social machine run smoothly without me. Then the couple made their entrance. Tessa in a pearly white dress, her new husband James in a tailored navy tux. They looked good. She saw me and froze for just a second, surprised. James didn't notice. Not yet. When the introductions and toasts were done, guests mingled again. James and Tessa made their way through the crowd, shaking hands and accepting compliments. When they reached me, Tessa gave a tight smile. Julian, didn't know you were coming. You invited me, I said calmly. Right, she said quickly, glancing away. Then James held out his hand. Nice to meet you. I'm James, I said, shaking it. I know. He grinned until he didn't. His smile slowly faded as he stared at me. Really stared. His grip loosened. His brow furrowed. Wait, what's your last name again? I tilted my head slightly. Same as hers. He pulled his phone out of his pocket like he was checking a message, but I saw his fingers moving, typing, then silence. He looked at the screen, then at me, then back again. His face went pale. You know that look when someone realizes they've made a terrible assumption? That was him. He cleared his throat, tucked the phone away like it had burned him, and muttered something about getting a drink. Tessa looked confused. What was that? I shrugged. Now, you're probably wondering what he saw. What made him freeze? Let's back up a second. Yes, I started as a bartender. But what I never told my family, not out of secrecy, just because they never cared to ask, is that I co-founded a craft spirits company 7 years ago. We started small, local, sold to niche bars and boutiques. But then we caught fire. A few viral campaigns, a couple celebrity endorsements, and a big distribution deal later, and our brand exploded. By 29, I bought out my partner. By 30, I had licensing deals across 3 continents. My bar job is running a multi-million-dollar operation that employs over 60 people. But none of that ever came up with my family because none of them ever treated me like a person worth knowing. They'd written their version of me years ago. The failure, the dropout, the cocktail monkey, and they never updated the script until now. As the night wore on, whispers started floating through the room. I saw James whispering to his brother, then to his father, then to a groomsman who shot me a wide-eyed glance before quickly looking away. Somewhere between the salad and the main course, my dad approached me. "Julian," he said, his tone weirdly measured. "I didn't expect to see you here." "You invited me," I said again, expression neutral. Right, he forced a chuckle. "So, still bartending, huh?" I could have let it go. I could have smiled, nodded, kept the peace, but something in me snapped. "I haven't tended bar in 5 years," I said. "But one of my products is behind yours right now." Asked the bartender. "The tequila in your glass? That's mine." He blinked. "What?" "I own the company that makes it." He laughed. "It wasn't real." "You're joking." I didn't answer. I just walked past him and up to the bar where the bartender was stacking used glasses. I waited until he noticed me. "Hey," I said. "You guys using cakes for the house tequila?" "Yeah," he said, lighting up. "Cakes Blanco. Smooth stuff. You tried it." "I'm the founder," I said quietly. His eyes widened. "No way." I nodded once. "Way." Dad had followed me. He heard every word behind me. I could practically feel his worldview cracking like ice under pressure. And that's when things really started to unravel. It didn't take long. I left Dad at the bar and returned to my table. I hadn't even sat down fully before I saw him across the room, whispering urgently into Mom's ear. Her eyes flicked to me, then to the bartender, then back to Dad, and I saw her face go tight with confusion, like a rug had just been yanked out from under her. She stood up straight, smoothed her dress, and started toward me with that passive-aggressive smile she always wore when she was about to pretend nothing was wrong. "Julian," she said as she arrived, brushing invisible lint from my lapel. "What was that little joke you were telling your father?" "No joke," I said flatly. "He asked if I was still bartending. I told him the truth." She blinked at me like I'd spoken in code. "You own that liquor company, Cakes?" "Yes, but you never told us." "You never asked," I said simply. Her lips thinned. I could see her trying to calculate how to walk this back. She glanced around, noticing the subtle looks being thrown our way now. Cousins, friends, Tessa's new in-laws. They'd caught on that something was happening, even if they didn't know what. And gossip moves fast in a room full of bored people in formal wear. Especially when the black sheep turns out to be something other than sheep. Mom leaned in closer, her voice a whisper now. "You know your father doesn't like being made a fool." I looked her straight in the eye. Then he should stop assuming he's the smartest person in every room. She recoiled slightly like I'd slapped her with words. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Instead, she turned on her heel and walked briskly back to Dad, whose face was turning red. Not from the alcohol this time. And then, like some badly timed sitcom punchline, Tessa walked up. She stood beside me, arms crossed, looking every inch the composed bride except for the storm brewing behind her eyes. "Can I ask what's going on?" she said, voice sharp. "James told me you own some company. He didn't give details, just said it was a big deal." I nodded slowly. "Cake Spirits. We supply to several national chains. You've probably seen the ads." "Wait!" She blinked. "You're that Cakes? That's your brand, since the beginning." Her mouth opened slightly. "Why didn't you ever say anything?" I stared at her, trying not to let years of resentment bubble over. "Tessa, I wasn't even invited to your engagement party. You never text me, unless it's a forwarded family photo. And last Christmas, you posted a picture captioned, 'The whole fam together again.' And I wasn't even in it." She flushed. I didn't mean anything by that." "Sure," I said, voice soft, "but that's the point. None of you ever meant anything by it. That's just how it always was." She didn't respond, just stood there in her overpriced wedding gown, suddenly unsure of which side of the social dynamic she stood on. And right then James returned. He was pale again, holding his phone like it had started bleeding. He said to Tessa, glancing at me like I might evaporate. "Can we talk?" She frowned. "What's wrong?" He looked at me again, then leaned in and whispered something into her ear. I couldn't hear it, but I saw her expression change. Her jaw dropped. Her eyes darted to me, back to him, and then down at the phone he held up. Then she slowly turned back to me. "You're on Forbes?" she asked, her voice cracking halfway through the sentence. I nodded, made the 30 under 30 foot list 2 years ago. "There's a video, too." James looked like he wanted to melt into the floor. I didn't know who you were when I shook your hand. I thought you were just a bartender. I offered. He nodded awkwardly. Sorry. That's when the rest of the room started catching up. I saw a bridesmaid whisper to a groomsman. A cousin pulled out his phone, then another and another. I watched as one of them tapped through images and suddenly froze, eyes wide. He turned the phone around to show someone else. My name, my photo, an article headline, the bartender who built a liquor empire. And just like that, I wasn't invisible anymore. People started approaching, a few politely at first, soft congratulations, questions about how I built the business, whether I was expanding internationally. Then the opportunist came, cousins I hadn't seen in years. Aunt Meredith, who once told me I was wasting my potential. Even Uncle Greg, who'd laughed the loudest when Dad called me a failure, now shaking my hand like we were old pals. It was like I'd stepped into an alternate reality. But the best part, the face Dad made as he watched it all unfold from the edge of the room. He looked like a man watching his own movie, except he was no longer the protagonist. He wasn't even in the scene. Mom kept trying to whisper things in his ear, but he waved her off, too stunned to form a coherent sentence. His glass was full again. He wasn't drinking it. I didn't approach him. I didn't need to. Instead, I answered a few more polite questions, offered a quiet goodbye to Tessa, and slipped out just before the cake cutting. I didn't need to stay. My presence had already done what it needed to. But what happened after I left? That's the part that really stings for them anyway. I didn't expect what came next. Honestly, I thought I'd made my exit clean. I wasn't looking for some dramatic showdown or a mic drop moment. I just wanted them to see me, really see me for once in their lives. Not the dropout, not the family disappointment, just me. But it turns out, you can't just drop a truth bomb like that into a room full of egos and expect the dust to settle quietly. The next morning, I woke up to 10 missed calls from an unknown number. I figured it was a telemarketer until I checked the voicemail. It was James. Hey, Julian. It's James. Sorry to call so early. I am him. I think we should talk. It's about your dad. I sat up in bed. The next message came a few minutes later. His voice was quieter this time. Listen, I know things were weird last night, but something happened after you left. Your mom and dad, they kind of blew up, like in front of everyone. I didn't want to say anything until we could speak. Can you call me back? I didn't. Not right away. Instead, I pulled up social media and there it was. A short, shaky video, no more than 20 seconds, posted by one of Tessa's friends. You could barely hear over the music, but the captions told the story. Father of the bride loses it during speech, storms out mid-reception. The comments were brutal. Apparently, sometime after I left, my dad had tried to give a toast. The kind he used to deliver at every family gathering back when he still saw himself as the head of the table. But this one didn't land the same. Not with whispers flying around the room. Not with half the guests now Googling me under the table. One comment read, he started saying how proud he was of Tessa for marrying into such a promising family. Then someone, I think the groom's cousin, asked why he never mentioned his successful son. The guy turned red and just walked off mid-sentence. Another heard someone say, at least the bartender made Forbes. I thought he was going to throw a chair. I couldn't help it. I laughed, not because I was petty, though, okay, maybe a little, but because for the first time, the narrative wasn't his to control. He couldn't bury me under his disapproval anymore. I'd outgrown the hole. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text from Tessa. Tessa, did you really have to humiliate him like that? I stared at it for a minute, then typed back, me? I didn't humiliate him. I answered a question. The truth did the rest. She didn't reply. That same afternoon, I got an unexpected visitor, Grandpa Harold. Now, Grandpa has always been quiet, a man of few but weighty words. When I opened the door and saw him standing there with a paper bag and a tired smile, I stepped aside without saying a word. We sat in my kitchen. He pulled out a bottle, one of mine and 2 glasses. I figured if I'm drinking your tequila, I should do it with the man who made it, he said. I smiled. I thought you didn't drink anymore. I make exceptions when my family finally gives me something to toast to. We sipped in silence for a moment before he leaned back in his chair. I saw what happened last night. Your father, he's not used to being second place, and he sure as hell isn't used to being wrong. I nodded slowly. He always wanted to be the loudest voice in the room, and now he isn't. Grandpa said, "You didn't need to raise your voice. You just showed up." He looked at me with those clear, steady eyes of his. "You did good, kid." That meant more to me than any apology from Dad ever could. But the fallout wasn't done. Later that week, a cousin I barely spoke to, Lisa, messaged me. She wanted to catch up, said she was thinking about switching careers, and had always admired my work ethic. A day later, Uncle Greg emailed me a business proposal. No joke. Said he had a great idea for a luxury gin line and wanted to collaborate. I ignored both, but the real twist came Friday. I got a certified letter. At first, I thought it was legal. Maybe Dad trying to pull some stunt, but no, it was from James. A formal handwritten letter. He wanted to meet privately. No Tessa, no family, just the two of us. And he made it clear in the letter. "There's something you deserve to know about your family and your father." I read that line 3 times because up until that point, I thought the only thing I deserved was an apology they'd never give. But maybe, just maybe, there was more. Something hidden, something they didn't want me to find out. And suddenly, the story wasn't over. It was just beginning. I didn't rush into that meeting with James. I let a few days pass, partly because I wasn't sure I wanted to know what he was holding on to, and partly because I needed time to think. After everything that had happened, the wedding, the whispers, the flood of fake smiles and sudden interest, I wasn't sure if I was ready to dig any deeper into the family. I'd spent a decade keeping at arm's length, but eventually, curiosity won. I texted him a time and place. A small coffee shop in the city, the kind of place where nobody would recognize us and no one would eavesdrop. James was already there when I arrived. Still in a crisp blazer, hair neat, posture straight. He stood when he saw me and offered a cautious smile like he wasn't sure which version of me would show up. The quiet disappointment, or the man whose name had made headlines that week. I sat down across from him and didn't waste time. "What do you want to tell me?" He hesitated, glanced around, then leaned in like we were trading secrets in a spy film. "Your dad," he said, "wasn't just trashing you at the wedding. He's been doing it for years." I raised an eyebrow. "Yeah, I figured that much." "No, Julian," he said, lowering his voice. "He's been deliberately lying to everyone. Me, my family, Tessa, even your own extended family. We thought you were barely scraping by, like you were working odd jobs, living in some dingy apartment above a dive bar. I felt my jaw tighten, and you all just believed him." He didn't flinch. Yes, because he said it with conviction. And because every time your name came up, he'd change the subject or laugh, or tell some story about how you couldn't hold a job or never finished anything you started. That part wasn't new, but it still hit like a slap. James continued, "But after I looked you up, after I realized who you actually were, I asked Tessa if she knew. She didn't. She was floored. And when she asked your parents, well," he took a breath. "Robert didn't deny it. He just said, he's not like the rest of us." I had to protect the family from his failure. I stared at him. "Protect the family," I repeated. "From me?" James nodded. It was insane. He acted like you were some stain on their legacy. But the truth is, I think he knew how big you were becoming. I think he knew before we did, and he couldn't stand it. I sat back in my chair, the words tumbling around in my head. All those years, I'd assumed they just didn't care. But they did, just not in the way I'd hoped. Dad had been actively rewriting my story behind my back, turning me into a cautionary tale to make himself look better. A failed son. A disappointment to be pitted, not celebrated. James slid something across the table. A manila envelope. "What's this?" I asked. "Proof," he said. "Emails, messages, even one where your mom told my mom you were working at a rundown bar near Skid Row. That was just last year. She actually said you were one missed paycheck away from asking for help." I opened the envelope slowly, pulling out a stack of printed emails and screenshots. I skimmed through them, each one more ridiculous than the last. Flat-out lies, fabrications. Some even included photos of me from years ago. One of me in a dingy t-shirt during a distillery install. Another where I was behind a bar smiling for a promotional shoot used as evidence of how badly I was doing. "I figured you should see them," James said. "I didn't know how else to make this right." I looked up. "Why are you doing this?" He shrugged, shame in his eyes. "Because I'm married into this family, and I didn't realize how much Ra was hiding under the surface, and because I saw your face at the wedding and realized I've never seen someone look so calm while everyone else scrambled to catch up. I stared at the papers again, then folded them back into the envelope. Thanks, I said quietly. I'll hold on to this. We said goodbye. No handshake this time, just a nod. And when I stepped out into the sunlight, I felt strange. Not angry, not even surprised, just clear. Like the final puzzle piece had dropped into place. I didn't go home right away. Instead, I drove out to the suburbs, back to the house I hadn't stepped foot in for years. The house where I'd grown up, been told who to be, and eventually discarded like a failed experiment. Mom's car was in the driveway. So was Dad's. I rang the doorbell. Mom answered, wearing her usual polished smile, the kind she used to welcome church friends or neighbors. She secretly gossiped about. The moment she saw me, the smile faltered. Julian, she said, voice tight. What are you? Is Dad home? She didn't move. Why? I want to talk. A moment passed. Then she stepped aside. He's in the study. I found him at his desk reading something on his tablet. He didn't look up when I walked in. Look who finally decided to come home. He muttered, still scrolling. I'm not here for a reunion, I said. I'm here to tell you that I know about the lies, the stories you've been spreading, about the emails, the fake narratives, everything. He froze slowly. He set the tablet down and looked up at me. I don't know what you think you know. I tossed the envelope onto his desk. He didn't open it. You spent years trying to erase me. I said, keeping my voice calm, but I didn't disappear. I built something real. And you couldn't handle that, could you? Because it meant admitting you were wrong. He said nothing. You told everyone I was a failure, that I was barely surviving, that I'd embarrassed the family. But the only embarrassment in this house is the man who thought lying about his own son made him more respectable. His mouth opened, but I cut him off. I'm not here to argue. I'm not here to scream. I'm here to let you know that whatever twisted version of me you've created, that ends today. The real story is out, and you can either accept that or spend the rest of your life pretending you didn't raise a man more successful than you'll ever be. He flinched at that. Good. I'm done trying to earn your respect. You lost the right to give it. With that, I turned and walked out. Mom tried to stop me in the hall, stammering something about how things got misunderstood. I didn't even look at her. I left the house for the last time. That was 8 months ago. Since then, things have shifted. Not because I forced them to, but because I stopped playing along with their script. Tessa reached out a few times. Apologies, long messages, guilt-ridden paragraphs about how she never realized how deep the favoritism ran. I responded politely, but I didn't go out of my way to repair anything. Maybe one day, maybe not. James and I stayed in occasional contact. I respect that he told me the truth. I don't trust him, not fully, but I respect him. As for my parents, I haven't heard a word. No calls, no emails, nothing. But a few weeks ago, I got an alert that someone had requested a meeting with my company's legal team. An anonymous inquiry about licensing fees and brand use, traced back to a small consulting firm run by, you guessed it, Uncle Greg. I declined the request. That same day, I donated a large sum to a nonprofit that funds hospitality scholarships for low-income students. The donation was made in my father's name. A week later, I got a letter in the mail. No return address, just 2 words inside. Why? I smiled. Because some legacies you inherit, others you build. And mine is better than anything they could have imagined.